Thanks for joining us on UPD. We're starting a series today on fatherhood, and today's episode is What is a Father?
We're going to take a look at what does the world say a father is and what does the Bible say a father is.
Stick around.
Welcome to the UPD podcast.
Designed to point men towards Jesus.
Real life, real talk. Join us. I'm Andy Lamb.
I'm Jonny Hanson.
This is the UPD podcast. I love it when Carl joins us. Carl just says, "Yo, go!"
It doesn't sound happy.
It doesn't.
He's not like, yeah. It's like, ah. So he's fallen into something. I think he's still the fallen. Maybe it's Carl.
It's Carl. It's definitely Carl.
Hi. Yeah. Thank you for joining us today. We are the Untrained Philosophical Discussionist. My name is Jonny Hanson.
My name is Andy Lamb. We call ourselves UPD. We are just two dudes that have about 100 years of experience between us, mostly making mistakes. And the goal of this podcast is to help bring light to those poor choices and how can we look going forward? How do we better model? Today we're going to be looking at, the idea of fatherhood. And I was a crappy dad for a long time. So, how do we use the Bible maybe to change that going forward?
Yeah, that is what this show is. It's us contrasting the old ways with the new ways. And 2 Corinthians 5:17 says that any man that is in Christ is a new creation. The old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. And we live that. That's our mantra. We try to give these examples in hopes that we can help other people, maybe avoid some of the pitfalls that we found ourselves falling into, like that fallen man.
Carl, that's what it is. Carl's like,
he made a mistake again. Carl, we'll come get you. You can be rescued or redeemed. We'll figure it out.
One of the two.
Yeah.
You can, if you want to follow us, you can follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to us there. You can subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple podcasts. You can find us on social media. You can follow us there on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram. And if you get something out of this, the best thing you can do to help support us is just to share it with somebody else.
Yeah, it's that goodwill that you already have earned through your friendship or relationship with another individual that's going to prompt them to want to check it out. So please do that. That helps us a lot, obviously. We're looking for more viewership. We spend a good amount of time really trying to contemplate these big ideas of where our lives intersect with Christ. And we feel like there's a lot of value in the mistakes that we made now because Christ has changed us so much.
Absolutely.
That we think that other people might find that too, and maybe again, it could help somebody before they get as far as we went.
Absolutely. We want to say hi really quick to our Finnish supporters.
We got to know. Yeah. Spotify notified us that we are the number one Christian podcast in Finland. So we wanted to take a minute and say to our Finnish friends, Hyvää päivää.
Or, hey.
Hey is the simplified form, the more formal greeting, Hyvää päivää.
We learned Finnish.
So welcome, Finnish friends. We're so glad you could join us today as well.
Absolutely, man.
I'm sure the president of Finland or whoever runs that joint is quickly making us up a certificate to put on the wall. And when he gets it to us, we'll make sure and put that up behind us.
This is your Nordic background coming through. You're just shining right. Your Swedes are.
I'm saying.
They're
all of them are right up in there. They're very excited about our work here. So we're appreciative to you Finnish people. Thank you so much. How was your week?
It was a week this week. One of the challenges of us not, moving into the house and moving forward with that, we were having we're looking at a new studio there. And Jonny did some amazing work here while I was gone this week of
Thanks.
A new studio look, man. You've really brought a new look to what we're doing. You got some amazing talents, man. It looks great in here. So
thanks. We been sitting in front of curtains for quite some time, and it just doesn't feel like it grabs as well as it could. So we wanted to, because this is going to be our place for the indefinite future, it was like, why not invest our time and resources into this, make it look nice and feel comfortable. Like if the cameras could be turned through the room's now very comfortable. There's places for people to come chill out. If we should ever have people. And again, in the future, actually, we intend to have guests. So we actually started working on a second room to do interviews in. So we intend to introduce some of that in the coming weeks as well. We have some great guests already lined up. It's going to be...
I'm excited for that.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Also, we have a partner today we want to talk about.
Oh, yes, we
as
do.
we go into the fatherhood series. We want to talk about Commission 127. They are a foster care organization that works to help place foster kids that are lost in the system into good Christian homes. They also work with foster care families to help bring support and care for them. So often it's a very overwhelming experience for foster care families. And so they do an amazing job of helping support them through a church network. And
both of our families support them.
Yeah.
We actually believe in it. It's not something that we were hitched on to for some other reason. We both believe in it. Our families actually support their organization. We think they're great. Rashad, thanks again for the gear, and Betsy, thank you guys so much. I wear this stuff outside of here. You've seen us both wear these hats prior because he's a smart man, or maybe it's his wife. One of you two is smart. Maybe it's both of you. You guys got good taste. This is cool stuff. The shirts fit nice. This is excellent apparel. Mm-hmm. So you can, if you want to look into them, you can go to C, as in Charlie, C127.org. Once again, that's C127.org.
Yeah, one of the Bible verses we look at for the organization is God tells us to take care of the widows and the orphans. And so they have taken to that. They have committed their lives to it. They have sacrificed so much for it, as they are parents and they are adoptive parents as well. I mean, they believe in that system. And one of the topics we're going to be talking as we unpack this fatherhood series is on stepkids and adoptive fathers. As you know, I've adopted 2 kids, and you're a stepfather and a father, and so we are firm believers in that.
I'm also a stepson.
Yeah, oh, that's right.
So yeah, this is a multifaceted. When we get to episode 4 is when we're going to really unpack some of those bigger ideas about stepfathers, adoptive fathers, and even probably dive a little bit into mentorship and what that can mean for a youth, especially as if they're in the foster care system and they start reaching some of those later teenage years. That can be tough for them to be adopted, but it doesn't mean that they don't still need a male mentor around. So we'll unpack a lot of that. I got some numbers on that already. I've been researching that. It's incredible what just a mentorship can do for a young person.
Yeah, we'll look forward to unpacking that. Every week we do a Proverbs on here. We believe the book of Proverbs is one of the most influential books you can be reading, whether you follow Christ or you do not. The book of Proverbs, in the Bible, they call it wisdom literature. And the design of it, a lot of it was written by a King Solomon, who was the son of King David. One of the things that King Solomon did was he prayed and asked God. God said, you can have whatever you want. And he asked God for wisdom. And because he asked God for wisdom, he was blessed beyond measure. Probably by today's standards would have been one of the wealthiest people to ever live.
Sure.
But this book was written as a tool for people to use on how to be wise when it comes to the stewardship of finances, how to be wise when it comes to the stewardship of your home, of your marriage. And so if you want to read the Proverbs for today.
Yeah, Proverbs 20:7. The righteous lead blameless lives. Blessed are their children after them. I'm going to repeat that. That's Proverbs 20:7. The righteous lead blameless lives. Blessed are their children after them.
What do you get out of that?
So the righteous is the statement. What follows is what the righteous is. So he's defining righteous. Lead blameless lives. I mean, that's the definition of righteous.
It is.
So he's developing, 6,000 years ago, the first dictionary, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then blessed are the children after them. It's self-evident. If you're leading a blameless life, please.
Blameless is kind of a Christianese word, I think.
Okay.
So if you follow us, I like this word Christianese. We sometimes use this biblical language, and if you don't know the Bible, maybe it's tough to understand kind of the context of what we're talking about. And so when you think of the word blameless, I think very often when we think of this word righteous, we start to think about self-righteous. And so we start to think about our lives as without fault,
Mm,
and that's not what a blameless life is.
no.
Nobody's lived a perfect life except for one man, that's Jesus. And so the righteous is a blameless life of the person who's chasing that or seeking that is when we make mistakes, we recognize the mistake that we make and we deal with it, whether we need to apologize to people, but it's a course correction. So I don't continue to live in that pattern. And I think that's when we think about righteous or we think about blameless, I think that's the understanding we need to have there. It's that it's not you're never going to reach perfection. It's just the goal is.
It's the direction.
Mm-hmm.
It's the arrow that you're pointing your body towards. It's
That's right.
the direction you're heading in.
That's right.
I wrote, doing that which is right, free from wrong, guilt, or sin.
Yeah. I wrote integrity.
Oh, integrity. That's perfection.
Yeah.
That's perfect. It's, if you've done wrong, we've spoken about this so much already, but it's always worth bringing up. I say, don't let the sun go down in your anger. I say that because the Bible says it.
Mm-hmm.
If you've wronged somebody, Christ actually tells you, put your coins down. Don't give them to the temple yet. Go back and mend that thing with your brother. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a demand multiple times in the Bible for you to the recognition, that you're going to get it wrong sometimes. They recognize that consistently, and they always give you the direct thing you should be doing, which is trying to mend that fence.
Mm-hmm.
It's trying to remedy or rectify, rather, that wrong that you caused.
Yeah.
And whatever that looks like, by the way.
And real true integrity is built when nobody was watching. Right. And so how am I living my life when I'm not out in front of people?
Mm-hmm.
Will usually dictate how I live my life when I am in front of people.
Sure.
And so living that life of integrity, living that a God-centered life all the time is our kind of our focus. So the how do I do that is, we talk about this all the time, is I spend time with them. How I build God-like, Christ-like integrity is.
How do you spend time with him, Andy?
For me, it's the Word. I mean, I think
When do you do that?
I do it at different times throughout the day.
Okay.
Sometimes I usually like to try to do it at the beginning part of the day.
Mm-hmm.
I have this idea of first fruits because as I go throughout the day, wake up early, work out, do everything we do, go to work all day. By the time I get home at the end of the night, I'm worn out, ready for bed. Yeah, and so to try to give my efforts to spending time with God at that point in time, just for me personally,
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like I'm checking a box rather than like trying to draw near to the Father. And so I like to do it during the daytime. Most of the time, I try to do it with the book open, with the Bible open. But there are days where I just need to be up and going, and
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes I'll hop in the car. YouVersion is a great Bible app, and you can actually just plug it into your car and hit play, and it'll play the whatever you're trying to listen to. So,
Oh, really? Okay.
yeah. So
Great.
sometimes it's just a matter of listening to it. But I just find personally that when I'm listening to it, my ADHD kicks in, and I start thinking about 18 other things I need to do that day. So I really try to focus in on just making sure I'm cracking the book open for a little bit each and every day.
Yeah, that's kind of my path too. It's the first thing I do in the morning. I always have enough time to do it. I did it today, and today was a busy day. I had to drop my son with his dad because I'm a stepfather.
Mm-hmm.
And he's spending a week with him for this section of the holiday season as we're rounding the corner on New Year's. And I still made some time. I woke up earlier. Why? Because this is important to me. It's the most important thing I can do for me. You can find some time in your midday. It's knowing yourself. It's knowing who I am and knowing that if I don't sit down first thing and crack this Bible open and read and digest, I'm not going to do it any other time. I just know me well enough.
Yeah.
Now I have become, and we've spoken about this now I'm probably 10 weeks into doing this, maybe 8 weeks into doing this. Every night before I go to bed, I crack the Bible, I find a passage, I read it, and then I go meditate for 10 minutes. And I just sit there and dwell on whatever that piece is that I read. And I've been doing it just kind of random. Here I am. Okay. All right. Yep. And then I just go into meditation and I kind of dwell on those words. Whatever words stick in my head, it starts out kind of repetitive. So I'm just repeating these words, and I have no great revelations still as of yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, as we always talk about, it's about intention.
That's it.
And what I'm doing is I'm trying to honor God more frequently throughout each day. And I want to know him better. And some guy mentioned, the guy who started the that app. What app was that? The prayer app.
For the pray app.
It's something like that. It was, but his is a meditation one. Doggone it. I should have wrote it down.
We'll put it in the show notes.
I'll put it in the show notes. But that guy mentioned that he does that. And that's how he actually came to the revelation of starting that app. I just think it's kind of cool. Like, it gives this window of time where I can maybe hear that still small voice in a loud and busy day.
Well, I think the important part that you said there too is the intention part, because blessed are the children that are after the second parts of that verse. Like,
Right.
Why am I doing this? So I can bless the children that come after me.
Yes.
So as we get into our topic for the day about fatherhood, I think so much of what we're going to be talking about today is this issue of modeling.
Well, let me say this too then, because I just think this fits right in with what you just said there. My wife, weeks ago, we talked about this. She's so good at just doing things when we talk about them, when she thinks of them, she just does them. Sometimes I'll get a little bit lackadaisical and I forget about the thing. But weeks ago we said, our son, who has special needs, that we think that he's ready now at 13 to get his own Bible and start reading it in the morning like we do. And modeling, that's what my wife and I do. That's the first thing we do. She's the same way as me. She's got to get it done first because it's what, starts her day. She's the type might get back into it later in the day, but I'm not. So we sit down and do it, and he's seen us do it forever. As long as I've ever been in his life, he's seen me doing that every morning.
Are you familiar with the Message?
No.
The Message is a paraphrase. So it was a guy that basically took the Bible and just started paraphrasing the Bible. So I wouldn't take it as what I would call scripture.
Sure.
But what it does a really good job of doing is taking somebody like your son.
Yeah.
And he can read that and go, I can catch the idea of this.
Oh, okay, cool.
So it's kind of like a starter thing that you could give to somebody.
That's great. I think that's worth, we'll talk about that after here too, and I'll take a look at it on one of the platforms, see if I can purchase it. We got him a teen Bible.
Cool.
And, this morning and yesterday morning, we didn't have to prompt him at all. That's part of it. It sits in his spot, like mine sits in my spot and my wife's. And he just takes it out of its little case thing and he opens it up and he just reads. And, I have him reading like I read, which is from wherever the highlighted thing is. So Joseph receives a message. 'Cause I started him in Matthew, of course. Mm-hmm. And it's just Joseph receives a message from an angel. And he reads the 3 paragraphs there and he reads them out loud and we listen and we're encouraging towards him and like,
so beautiful, man.
That's great, buddy. What do you think? And he's like, him, he's like, it's great.
Yeah.
'Cause he's just always, everything's great.
Yeah.
And, I just think that he's going to be blessed and he, I'm not righteous and I'm certainly not blameless. But my intentions towards Christ are.
Yeah.
And I think that that's already part of the blessing right now is that he has seen us doing it for so long and he just jumps right into it because he knows that must be what older people do.
Yeah.
And I want to be older. I'm 13. I want to be older. And so we're just like, this is part of being older, buddy, is you spend your morning with God.
Yeah.
He's just like, okay.
There's a big fancy word in the theological realms called justification. Justification simply means that you are declared righteous because of what Jesus did. Mm. And so when we start thinking through the do, like I always have to do, and Lee Strobel talked about this on Sean Ryan's podcast. I thought it was brilliant. Mm-hmm. He said every other religion is do. You got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do that. And in Christianity, it's done. What Jesus did on the cross was done. And so everything that I'm doing, Jesus is putting his blood is just covering that and going, you are declared righteous because of what I did before the Father. And so that is when we read through this, that the righteous lead blameless lives. It's because the only reason why I can be righteous is because of what Jesus did on the cross.
Right.
Right. And it is what we do important, obviously, yes, but my doing isn't what gives me right standing before God, right? And so I think it's really, really important that when we look at the Christian life that we're not inward focused, we're always going to be outward focused. It's what am I doing to exemplify for the next generation of believers? And it should start right in your home if you're a father. It needs to start right there in the home. thing that I want to remind people of as we get into this, as we start to kind of lay out our argument of what biblical fatherhood is, it's never too late to start, right? No matter how old your kids are, it's never too late for you to start. Just always remember, it's never going to be about what you say. It's always going to be about what you do. Modeling is about an issue of action. And so as you start to go, okay, how do I begin? You need to start taking some actions in your life. Like, you need to take ownership of your life. You need to take ownership of the choices you're making in your life. You need to take ownership of the mistakes you made. And you might have to go and make some apologies. And then to start to just live your life in such a way that people can see the evidence of it.
Mm-hmm.
Not coming in telling people, hey, this is what I'm doing. Just start living it.
Sure.
And let people see, what you're doing. That'll be the difference maker.
Yeah. It can take a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And you just got to ask God to fortify you as you go through that process of stepping up.
Yeah.
Especially if it's been a long time.
Yeah. I had a decade of my life where I was buried in a bottle, buried in myself. And I'd lived a very horrible life as a father. Just, there was zero modeling. There was zero spiritual leadership, zero protection. I buried it in the guise of I am providing financially for my family, and that's enough. But that is, although that's important, that's such a small piece of everything. And so just, if you listen to this podcast week to week, you hear these stories a lot, but we have new people joining us all the time. And so we just always want to make sure it's that as you join in on this, you understand where we're coming from, made a lot of mistakes in life. And so our mission is going forward. How do I be, better in any of that areas of what we're going to be talking about?
Yeah. So let's define a father. I wrote down, this is Johnny's definition of a father. This is kind of an idealistic version, I think, but this is what I'm shooting for.
Okay.
The man in a child's life that brings love, security, discipline, and vision for the child to help them maximize their potential.
List those out again.
Love, security, discipline, and vision to help maximize the child's potential.
I think I don't think you can come up with a better description of what your role is.
Thanks.
I kind of looked at it from the standpoint of what does the world say a father should be versus what.
I looked up the dictionary one.
Did you?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's basically a sperm donor.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's what was in the dictionary when I
what a father is. It's just
it was the part A was the male biological part half of pregnancy. It was very sterile sounding.
That's what it is. So I wrote a few things down here with the world. So number one, financial provider. And we could put that one in actually, I think, both categories of things. But I think with the financial provider, what we look at it from the world standpoint, what their success is material and your career. Like, those two things are the indicators of whether or not you are a good financial provider and you are leading financially. As if you have enough stuff, then that will say that you have been a good financial provider. When we look at the issue of protector, on the world side of things, I think so much of that is the machismo side of things, like just the physical piece of it. Is it my role to physically protect my family? 100%. We do gun training, like we work out, like there is an aspect of I need to be prepared to protect my family, and I'm all about it. But from the world standpoint, they're just simply saying it's your physical prowess is going to be how you are going to be the protector. The disciplinarian, and this is an interesting one for me. So much of what we see today for disciplinarian is this stoic, like hardened father, the military-esque father that has to be just the guy that comes down with the hammer all the time. Mm-hmm. And when we look at discipline, and we'll talk about some verses of this in a little bit, when we look at discipline in the Bible, it's always received in love. So there's this separation of discipline of what the world might say discipline is and what the Bible says that discipline is. And then I looked at, my eyes, role model. This is, I think, the big one for us is that the role model says that the emphasis is on career, the emphasis is on success, and the emphasis is on social status. Whereas with the role model, what the Bible says, it's going to be spiritual leadership. And we look at servant leadership. That's going to be kind of some of the differences that I want to kind of unpack as we go through this here today.
Great. Yeah, that sounds awesome. Gosh, what was that second one?
The protector.
Protector. Yeah, I look at it as like I'm also there to mentally protect my children. And what does that mean? Well, I mean, they could be being harassed or bullied at school. With our son, we worry about that frequently because, somebody could be a jerk to him and he wouldn't understand it
Yeah.
completely. And how am I able to be that for him? Well, I'm always asking him how he's doing. And I've made myself available in a way where it says, I'm saying to him, not unlike God says to us, come to me, I will listen, I will respond. Come to me, buddy. I will listen and I will respond. What does respond mean? Well, it might mean I call a teacher at the school, if that is the case. It might mean there could be some other issue of the heart for him, and I believe and I hope, and it's always my intention, is to create an open channel for him to know that Johnny has his best interest in mind, that anything he talks to me about, I don't start in a place of fear or anger or frustration. I present open to him always so that he can say whatever it is. And I don't need him to get on with it. I'll let him express himself in whatever fashion that is. And in fact, sometimes if he's frustrated, because he'll get frustrated because for him cognition is the difficult thing, being able to like tell a story, to round out a story that would have like time and distance and those kind of calculable measurements. That's tricky for him. But I'm patient because he needs patience.
Mm-hmm.
And if he gets frustrated in that, I allow him to step away from it. And then we'll hit it from a different angle later on, and I'll use reinforcements to kind of bring him up. Kind words and or like, sometimes it's just been an openness for him to be able to come to me. And I think that's what God does, by the way. And that's what God always says is, oh, your heart is anxious? Come to me. I will listen and I will respond. God always responds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It might not be exactly what you think you want in that moment, but God is a responder and he's always responding. But he's always listening. And he's always telling us to come to him. And that is the model, I think, for me, that I'm trying to set for my kids is I'm here, I can listen, and respond might be something else too, but it's always going to be, I have your best interest. One of the nicest compliments I ever got was my wife sent to me recently. The nieces were at the house. We're having a slumber party weekend at the house. And one of the girls wanted something, doesn't matter what. And I was outside, and she says to my wife, yeah, Uncle Johnny would do that. He'd do anything for us. And I was just like, yeah, you're freaking right I would, first off. Like, yeah. But like also like what a great thing for a little girl to think that guy, he has my best interest in mind. I can trust him.
Mm-hmm.
He's trustworthy and he's valuable to me. Like he he's just, I don't know. It just really
you show up. I think because I think that's the biggest thing for kids is just whether it's a father or uncle or whatever it may be, it's just that man in those kids' life is just that you're showing up and that you're consistent every single time that you're there.
Their dad shows up too. Listen, they've got a gang of men around them that are there and that show
awesome
up.
Grandpa.
Yeah, I got a terrific grandpa, Izzy. They've got this huge network of men that are involved, that show up to everything. And, another piece is like, that engagement piece. It's when they have something, I'm not fiddling with stuff and, okay.
Yeah.
I put stuff down.
Yeah, that's good.
And I'm just right here with them. Oh, yeah? What'd you do? one of the older of the two, she's doing theater now. She's like 10. She's doing theater things, and we go to those. And when she comes out, I'm down low. I'm hunkered. What were you doing? Oh my gosh, you were so awesome. I seen you when you do this thing. And I'm trying to remember things too, so that when I see her later, I can tell her how cool that one specific thing was. Instead of, yeah, I seen it. It was great. Which is that's the carnal, that's the earthly Johnny.
Right.
Is this is a children's play. I've seen actual actors play on real stages, and it's awesome. And this is children, and it's loud. You forgot your lines.
Yeah.
No, it's awesome. She's my niece, and she's awesome and funny. And, when our son had his performances recently, his dad shows up, and we're there, and the uncle shows up. So, we support his kids. He supports our kids. So again, our son is seeing all these men showing up. Grandpa would have been there. He was at the last one. He was just out of town this time. It's like the men are in, God's just given us this great group of men in this family that we're present in everything. And we desire that time too. We got a heart for it. You know?
Well, I think that's the heart of the Father. When we think about God the Father, it's like this idea of protector. Probably the most famous passage of Scripture we can point to that is Psalm 23. Yea, though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I will fear no evil because you are with me. And that's the piece of that protection. And the ancients would call him Jehovah Rohi, R-O-H-I is what they would call him. It was God the protector. And because they knew that God was going to be in the presence with them. And so that's that part of fatherhood of when we talk about being available, like when you are the protector, it's because you're showing up and you're intimate with them. There's this nurturing piece that comes with that fatherhood part of it when you are the protector. It's that they know that they can come to me because I'm present when I'm with them. And it's very easy to get distracted as fathers, especially when your kids are young, that there's all these distractions in the world. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have time as a father to go and,
you have to make time for yourself.
For
too.
sure you do. But it's
being an adult and a parent just means you have to now manipulate your time and make it fit to others. What did you call it? You said you got a term for it when you're itemizing your day. Remember what you said about that? No. The point is, you have to make time for the important things in your life. If your kids are important, they should be. You got to ask yourself a question. Who do I want this person to be when they become an adult? Do I want to like them when they're a kid, by the way? Because there's going to be certain ways you go about trying to develop your child so you like them, let alone other people like them.
Right.
Or you might not like your own kids.
Yeah.
That's not impossible. I've seen people that don't like their kids.
Here's
I've seen people that talk trash on their kids, and it's their kids.
I know.
You're like, huh? But on the other side of it, I've seen these pushover parents that have no ability to say no to their kids, and nobody else likes their kids. They think they like their kids, but they're caught in some loop, and their kid's nuts and is a maniac and has no discipline. And that's going to be the other piece. When you said about discipline, there is a disciplinarian thing. By the way, I thrive under discipline. What does discipline mean? Well, so do you, by the way. It means I've disciplined myself, by the way, to wake up in the morning and get in the book. Because I know myself well enough that if I don't do it, then I'm not going to do it throughout the day.
Yeah.
On the days off, I go from reading the Bible to hitting the gym. Why? I want to discipline my body. I want my body to fall under my orders. I don't want it just to be a nothingness. We talked about that in the Physically Hard series. These are going to be important components that you're trying to think about as, if you are a new dad, who do I want this person to be throughout the phases? Well, we're actually going to do phases, I think, in the
next one we're looking at stages of fatherhood. So what's it look like to be a father when your kids are small and when they're teenagers and when they're grown?
But you can be thinking about that now. Who do I want this person to be? What values do I want them to have?
Yeah.
Thinking
that's a big part of it.
Boy, who do I like around me? What do I like about myself? Those things I can pour in. What do I like about other people I look up to, other mentors or other interesting people? Okay, how do I pour that into them? And then who do I want them to be as an individual on their own too? Like, what freedoms do I want them to find value in and success in?
Yeah.
And these are all things that you can be thinking about, and should be, by the way, as a parent, because you're the one that will be the molder of these little creatures in your house.
You know, it's when we read like this verse in the Bible, the Proverbs that we read 20:7, and it says that blessed are those that follow them. I think when we read sometimes these Proverbs, and we're going to talk about a Proverbs next week that will really fall into this category. Proverbs are truisms. They're not promises.
Oh, right.
Right. And so there's no guarantee that, you know, I can do everything correctly as a parent. I can model correctly. I can spiritually lead. I can love. I can nurture. I can discipline. I can do all these things to the best of my abilities. And at the end of that, there's no guarantee that this child that I've taught will be a follower of Christ, will be, a good moral person. There's no guarantees of that. It's just the chances are, if I do this correctly at some point, that I'm going to model it in such a way that they're going to turn out to be.
But you're saying it without saying it. It's showing up. It's just every single day I'm there. I'm not going to get it right every single time. Nope. It's impossible. But I'm going to always be there. By the way, another great thing you can do when you do screw up, you can go to your kid and talk to him about it.
That's one of the most important things you have to do as a parent is when you don't do something right, is you admit your fault and then show them how you're going to do it better on the other side of it. Because that's real life. Like this, there's that book by Jocko Willemick, Extreme Ownership. If you've never read that before, I think every teenage boy should read that book, Extreme Ownership. It's just owning my mistakes. It's owning my own crap. And then being willing to say, how do I become better at that? That's that modeling piece that we've been talking about.
Right.
And I think, the Bible obviously is going to be our greatest tool of that. And so there's some attributes that I believe that God the Father has exemplified, that he has highlighted throughout Scripture, that has given us the perfect, without us being perfect, but has given us the perfect diagnosis of what we need to do. So how do I
formula.
The formula, thank you. How do I be a good father? So those are some of the things I think we really need to kind of pour into here today as we kind of go through this, is what is a good father.
Great. You have a list?
I do have a list of things, and I have some scripture verses to kind of back us up on that. And so I think the first thing I want to look at is the discipline part for me, I think, is one of the most important aspects of fatherhood, is being the proper disciplinarian. And it's always being a disciplinarian in a way that I'm disciplining them to show them the better way. I'm not coming in with anger and a temper, guilty as a man who's dealt with anger and dealt with a temper. And so what does discipline look like in the Bible when a father disciplines? There's a verse in Hebrews that I want to read here the book of Hebrews is another one of these really great books, but Hebrews 12:4-11. And it says, if you are not disciplined, then you are not legitimate. You are not true sons and daughters.
Say that again, please.
It says, the paraphrase of this is that if you are not disciplined, you are not legitimate. You are not true son or daughter. And what the verse is really tying this to is that any good father disciplines his kids. Why? Because he loves them. He wants to course correct them. And if a father is not disciplining, then it is actually a sign that you don't love them.
Jordan Peterson, who I had a hard time not just taking all his stuff and just speaking in a froggish Canadian accent. If I had any ability to do an accent, I would have just wrote all his stuff down and just talk like him all day.
What we should do is just we're just going to put a link to Jordan Peterson's podcast, and
I think that's probably the smartest thing to do.
Just don't listen to us two yahoos. Just
go over there. He says, love isn't just acceptance. He's speaking of what love is, how to love a child. Love isn't just acceptance. It's encouragement. And it's, no, don't do that. That's beneath you. You're capable of more. That is what discipline is. It's, I know you have higher value. And when you act that way, that's not the value that I know you have. So you can do better. That's a great discipline. He goes on to say, I don't want you to disrespect yourself in public because I like you.
I love that part.
And I don't want people getting the wrong idea about you. That's discipline right there.
Yeah.
Yo, I remember, when I was real young, you got to swat on the backside.
Bible says don't spare the rod.
Hey,
right?
You got to swat.
Yeah.
I earned every single one of them.
Sure did. Me too.
I remember when the SWATs went away and discipline started, the verbal discipline. And I remember both my mom and my dad at different times coming up and being like, yo, and disappointment from them just exuded off them, where they were like, I don't even know you. Who taught you this? Where does this come from? This isn't us. And just there, I remember my mom specifically like crying. My mom cries easily. But I remember her just being like, I'm not even mad. I'm just very sad that you thought that's what you wanted to do. And that you wanted to, whatever the thing was, you wanted to be that way. I don't even know where that comes from. I feel like I don't know you. It's going to take me a while for you to earn my trust back. And I remember just being like ashamed and sad about that. And like that really affected me. Guess what I didn't do again? Whatever that thing was, I straightened that out because it like hurt.
Yeah.
And it was way worse than getting a SWAT. You get a SWAT, a little while later, you're running around with the kids in the park again. Who cares?
Yeah.
You probably, pick on your little brother again, which got you the SWAT the first time.
Yeah. When I was 17, I remember coming home. I had gotten in trouble at school. They had called my parents. And I remember walking up to the house. My dad was an intimidating guy growing up. And so I was.
Your dad's still an intimidating guy at 70-something.
Yeah. He was a hot-tempered guy. And so I was ready for it when I walked in. And I'll never forget this, man. He met me on the front porch. We sat down on the front porch of our house. And he just said, you're at an age now where, me trying to discipline you, those days are done. Mm-hmm. And he just asked me, he was just like, who do you want to be? And
there's that piece again, huh?
Yeah, he was just like, is this really the character of a person you want to be? And he's just like, he just sat there quietly and just was like, I'm just disappointed. And
that was a heavy
weight because my expectation was he was going to come in and just, hammer me. And he didn't.
Well, that would have been easier.
It would have been way easier. He got so much more with me just by that level of disappointment. Just like, he was just like, you're better than that.
And you don't ever hear your parents talk that way to a friend. I had never heard my parents talk that way to anybody before. Like, that's not a conversation they have in the grocery store with Betty down the road. I'm so disappointed in you, Betty. They'd probably have that in private if she needed to talk to Betty. That was the first time I ever heard them and seen that face and that look and that just countenance. Mm-hmm. Countenance is like the overwhelming thing that blankets a person when they're of an emotion, I think is what countenance means. Yeah, something to that effect.
Yeah.
And it lingered on me for a while, man. And again, I just remember whatever it was I had done. I think it was being unkind to another friend, which, duh. It just sat with me and it hurt like in a different way. And it was way heavier. And, I probably had that conversation like 20 times as I got older through my 20s.
Yeah.
When things got crazy drinking and whatnot, seeing my parents and then just them seeing me and being like, ugh.
Yeah,
and feeling that.
Yeah, and then not wanting to even be around them anymore.
Then it has to lead to that. Again, not to get too deep into those weeds, but yeah, that's when you start isolating and you start pulling back from everybody. And that's how you can start telling if your, thing that you're doing is not healthy, is you start pulling away from the people that love you.
Absolutely. I just had this same experience with my 18-year-old son just recently. He was doing some stuff that he knew he shouldn't be doing. And, I was able to have that same conversation. I remember that conversation my dad had with me.
Stanky.
Yeah. And just like, just asking the question of who do you want to be? And do you want to look like everybody else? I was like, because, the world has plenty of you already.
But I think you're special.
I think you're
and I've heard you talk to your boy.
Like you're a leader.
Yeah.
Is this how leaders lead?
I think you're great. I say that to my son all the time. I think you're awesome. Are you kidding me? You're great. But what is this? This is crap. This isn't you.
That's all I had to say to him. About an hour later, he texted me. He's like, Dad, you're right. It's time for me to step up. And it's like, okay, so in that choice, in that moment, I could have been like, you're grounded. You're not hanging around with those people anymore.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, at 18 years old, what is me telling you you can't be around people like that anymore? Because you're
By
going
the
to be
way,
around people.
would you have ever listened
No,
when you no?
no. But
Well,
you're going to be
in
around,
front of you anymore, I guess.
you're going to be around people like that the rest of your life. And so
Yes,
what's the
good
choice
point.
here? I can try to, pull you away from it, but what good is that going to do? Or I can push you back into it and go, you need to make better decisions. Now, I'm not saying just to be willy-nilly, just be like, oh, you messed up again. But I need to put you back in that same situation to see you make decisions differently. Because if I can see you make decisions differently now, then I'm going to create a discipline in your life where when you're faced with those same temptations again, you have an option now. It's I can remember that, I can be like them or be like the world. I can be like Christ. And what do I want to be like? If I'm a leader, I need to lead. That means that's that whole integrity piece is what am I doing when nobody's watching? And I think those are the things that we need to be forming, especially into our boys. Raising a daughter is a completely different animal. But raising our boys, we need to teach our boys how to become men, but men by biblical standards, not manhood by the machismo world standard of things.
Yeah, there's gosh darn it, there's a book. Now I can't remember the title of it. Of course, I lose it. It broke down the difference between sons and daughters. A son is always asking, am I enough to a dad? Am I enough? And it's your responsibility to just say to them, not only are you enough, you're so much more. And a daughter is saying, am I lovely? And the response to that is, of course you're lovely, but you're so much more. And that's where that piece comes in, where when you're doing any course correction for your kid, any age, it needs to be this definitive, that's below you. That behavior, whatever that is, that's below you, and that you disrespect yourself with that. And I, as your parent, as your father, I see you as so much more. And I'm going to be here. Again, I'm here, I'm listening, and I will react. Or I will respond, rather. Create that door to always be open. And then when those bad behaviors come in, you can step into that spot and go, that's below you. And because they'll respect that you're always there. Again, you're always showing up. You're always engaged. By the way, we're specifically only speaking to men. Ladies who listen, thank you. First off, thank you. We see quite a bit of you in the comments, and we appreciate that big time. Men take their cues from their wives. Period. There's not much more to say about that. Especially when, like myself, where I didn't have a biological dad there. So my stepfather went about in his best way and in a great way, guiding me on how to be a dad. And I get that opportunity now. But I'm always looking to my wife to be like, is that the right amount of discipline? Is that the right amount of love? Because not all those reactions come 100% natural to me.
Yeah.
So I am looking to her to give her stamp of approval. And, well, then why doesn't a woman run the house, you might ask? Yeah, she should just run everything. If she's the one, if you need her to tell you if you're doing a good job. Well, C.S. Lewis. Hey, Mike. He said it would be a disaster if women were the patriarch. Why? He goes to paint on a picture. He said, well, what if the neighbor's dog came over and bit one of the kids? Would you rather see the husband come over and have a conversation with you or the wife? I asked my wife that, and she goes, oh my gosh, I'd rather have the husband. And in fact, our dog mauled a cat one time. This is a while back before we moved.
Yeah.
Did I tell you this?
Uh-huh.
The husband came to the house. He came, knocked our door. He was very calm. And he goes, my wife's at home, very upset. And the kids are very upset too. And I go, yeah, rightfully so. What's the vet bill and how do you take Venmo? Hey. I think he came because the wife is so, she birthed these kids. Those were part of her body for a long time. And she has a special relationship with those kids. And her fight and fervor for those little pups that were inside of her is immeasurable compared to ours. Now we're fighters and we will fight for our family, and we're able to compartmentalize as men. Yeah. And I think we can compartmentalize a situation that would be our kid got got a bite from a dog and they weren't mauled to death. They were just kind of nipped at, and we're unhappy about it. And we're going to go over there and we're going to shake our fists probably at the neighbor and say, man, that happens again. That dog's, one of us is taking care of that dog. Where a wife will go over there. My wife, if something like that happened to our boy, either of our boys, she had to go over, I shudder to think at what, venom would come out of her mouth and what they'd receive, the amount of threats they'd receive.
For sure.
It'd be a night. Police would be showing up.
Send the mama bear after him, right?
It is. So C.S. Lewis paints that picture real well, saying, we as men, we're given this great responsibility.
Right? It's a difference of role.
That's it, man.
That's it.
Hey,
no better, no worse. Difference of role.
Super modern folks. But there's a difference between a man and a woman.
Yeah.
And that's the important part. We both bring our own, Jordan Peterson, again, to speak on him, in part of this discussion I was watching him, he said, the trauma of losing a mother, someone never gets over. He just made that bold statement. He goes, a father who's not there can be remedies for that. And there can be ways for you to bridge that back if you're a father that's went away for a while. And he speaks onto that too. I'll try to find that video and I will put that one in the link as well. Because this would be an important one for anybody that's interested. He's just so great at he spent so much time thinking about these big picture ideas and he unpacks them so well. But he's talking about women have just this very special role, but men have their own special role too. And it's never fulfilled completely by another.
Yeah.
If you're the biological father, you're the 100%, part of your equation. Can someone else come in? Yes. Is it helpful when they do? Very much so. In fact, I've got endless statistics we'll talk about in episode 4 about how much of a change stepdads can make, mentors can make, adoptive fathers make in a child who otherwise wouldn't have that component of their life.
Yeah.
And some of these numbers are going to be startling to you.
Staggering, man.
When we find out about jail and prison population and motherless children in this day and age and all these different numbers that are all on the rise. We'll go over that in a coming episode. So, stay tuned for that. That's going to be a very interesting episode because there's going to be some of those hard things, as there usually is in this world, but there's a lot of joy on the other side of it as we start to discover the differences that even small amounts of your time can go and make a big change in.
The reason why God set it up this way for there to be a man and a woman inside of a house, it creates the best opportunity for that child that you're bringing into this world to be another follower, to be somebody who is providing and giving back to the community and living in such a way that that they're recognized as a part of the community and not an outcast of the community. It's
a maximization of their potential.
It is, 100%. This comes into the next piece. I want to kind of the provider part of this.
Okay.
One of the dangers of being the provider is busyness. Because as the provider, it is my role in my household. Now, maybe in your household, maybe the woman is the provider as far as the financial piece goes. But if you're the father that is the provider, which we see very often inside of homes, again,
you're talking of a sole provider. So
sole provider.
Only one person works in the household. It's the man.
In my house, that's what I am talking about is
sure.
In my house. Okay,
yep.
Your house may be done very differently, but very often when we think about provider of us is just all the financial part of it.
Yeah, the world says that that's the person that provides the money,
the material, the success, the social status. That's what the world would say. When we look at provider for what the Bible would have to say, I believe we have a different standard there. And busyness, as I was just saying, I think is to the detriment of our kids, because it's very easy for us, if you're working all the time, is to just to label it as, I don't have time for you because right now I'm doing the working. And there is an aspect of you modeling working and creating work ethic inside of your kids that's super helpful. But you were talking about this earlier with your nieces. One of the things of why they know that Johnny is there is because when you are there, you're a busy guy, right? You run a business, you guys run a ranch, we're doing this. You have a lot of reasons why you could not be present and available. Mm-hmm. But you're making the decisions now to, even though I am busy, to be present when I am home. And that's, I think, the big difference that we need to shift as the provider of here is I'm providing a nurturing relationship when I am there. It doesn't mean that I don't spend the majority amount of time away from the house working and providing. It just means that this limited hours that I am there, that I'm making sure that I'm focused and with intent on what I'm doing when I'm inside that house.
Yeah, there was a TEDx that I watch. I watch a bunch of those too. I love those because they're just so personalized. They're, it's anecdotal frequently. I watched one that was like a prison guard that spoke about how his father was absent and how this opportunity working in this prison has made him a father of many, and how he goes about shepherding these men in this prison. It was just a beautiful story about how, he's finding redemption there and he's finding his place. There's this other guy, Mark Taryn, who spoke about, he said he wanted to be one of the best fathers. He wanted to be the greatest father. And he said the two things that make the best father are interested and engaged. And his father wasn't those things. His father was a busy guy and would always have these excuses why he was busy, and he was trying to make a career, and then the career was starting to go. And then when this guy started trying to get his career going, boom, all of a sudden he's very busy and busy. And it always seemed to fall right when he's supposed to be doing something for his kid, something else would come up. And, but this is going to make my business more successful. But and he found himself consistently teetering towards, it's going to be worth it if I do this business thing now because I'll have more time later. And what he quickly realized, thankfully for him, was that those business things are going to come and go and they're fleeting. And he was becoming his dad, the dad that he, had a very hard time with in his youth, trying to find any time with that man and really feeling like his father wasn't around at all. And he thankfully for him, seen the difference between those two things and was able to, step away from work in that sense. And he said, it might have made me less successful in that field, but it's made me a more successful person in my household.
So I think what you're talking about there is sacrifice.
What do you know?
We
speak about that pretty frequently.
Yeah. It's what am I you're always sacrificing something, right? And it is a hard thing to teeter between of the success of business, because maybe you will provide a better future for your family if you can make more money. But you always have to ask the question, and what's the cost? Because there's a cost to everything. And that's the sacrifice piece of it is, am I willing to sacrifice time and interest and engagement with my kids for interest and engagement of my business? And very often the world standards is, I'm going to chase the business because that is my identity. That's how I know I've made it. Sure. And that is a hard thing to wrestle through, is, being financially providing for your family in such a way. There's a verse that tells us to bless the next generation financially, be a blessing not only to your kids but to your grandkids as well financially.
Sure.
So there is a stewardship to peace with the gifts that God has given me. But I think even chasing after your dreams of building something, if you're intentionally when you're home that you're engaged, I think that's what you're trying to talk. What Taryn was trying to explain there.
Yes. Yes. You might get home at the end of the night and you've had a long day and your day was just exhausting and you're mentally drained, but your kids didn't have a long day with you, unless you brought them with, but you probably didn't. And taking just that period of time where you check in on them and you get down to their level if they're young, or you meet them where they're at when they're whatever age, and you are face to face with them and you let them know, hey, Dad's here. How was your day? And you just engage with them. It doesn't have to be an hour. It doesn't have to be multiple hours. You should be trying to achieve something like that. And don't be afraid to be nosy. By the way, I'm just thinking of that now too. Don't be afraid to be nosy, because especially if you're a busy dad, be a nosy dad then. You might have to be especially nosy if you're especially busy. Why? Because again, as dad, you have a special place in your child's life that is ordained in your family probably and through God, which is you get the discipline thing. My wife leans on me for that, and your wife does too.
For sure.
As your household. And when dad knows things, my dad always had like a sixth sense. He would know stuff, and I don't know how he knew it. And it was probably because he was nosy. From time to time, he'd pick up the receiver on the phone downstairs. Can't do that anymore with the phone. But you pay your child's phone bill if they're in the house, and you can see who they're calling, and you can tell them. And it doesn't even mean that You can like, my dad would have a suspicion, but boy, his suspicion felt like he knew. I come in the house and he'd be like, where were you on Saturday at 3 p.m.? I'd be like, huh? What? And he'd go, and my dad would do those like pregnant pauses where he'd just sit on something like that and stare. And the longer he stared, like the more upset he got about the fact that he was still staring at me and I hadn't responded to him. I said, where were you at 3 on Saturday? His eyes would get bigger. You're like, all right, I was out with Jerry. Yeah, doing what? Because hey, don't you lie. Crap, he knows. Oh, no. How much do I tell him? Right? So be a nosy dad. Poke your head in their door. Hey, what's up? What you doing? On the computer? What you looking at? You have to.
Mm-hmm.
I know you think like in your heart, like, I like my freedom. You earned it. You're an adult.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have their time too.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're the parent and they're in your house, you have to know what they're doing. Why? Because people will exploit them. You're supposed to be the protector.
That's the protector part of it, right?
People will exploit them. They if they don't know what's right and what's wrong, they might exploit themselves. And they might not even know they're doing it. So it's your responsibility to be checking in on that stuff. What are they watching on the TV? What are they doing on the computer? What games are they playing? How are they talking in those games? What games are they? What is your child all about? And you need to know those things as dad. And then you can start using some of those dad superpowers where you go like, hey, light was on in your room till 2 a.m. the other night. What's up with that? You got school in the morning time. Huh? Well, I happened to wake up and I see the light was on in your room is the true answer there. But it's like, what you doing?
Mm-hmm. But that's an engagement piece. Like if you're engaged and involved with what they're doing, then you're going to notice those and you're going to have the boldness to have those conversations with them. I think very often in parenting, it's very easy for us in our busyness to not pay attention because it's just easier if I just let them do whatever they're going to do than rather be confrontational because people want to steer away from confrontation. But if you steer away from confrontation, then you cannot be the protector and provider that the God-willing part of your protection and provision part that you're supposed to be. You should be engaged in what they're doing and watching and what they're pouring in because either you're going to raise them or the world's going to raise them. Somebody's raising them. Somebody's modeling for them.
Yes.
And so if you love that child, then you're going to step in that role because that's the love piece is like.
For crying out loud, again, if you even want to like that child.
You want to like that child.
You have to be a part of setting them up so they're likable.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, to reiterate this, the discipline piece is, I think you're better than that. That's the discipline. That's the discipline. I think you're more valuable than this thing you're doing. Mm-hmm. And I think you have higher potential. I believe in you. Maybe you're not believing in yourself right now. That's why you do that lesser thing. But your dad, I love you.
That's it.
And I like you.
That's it.
And I think you should set higher standards for yourself. So if it's someone you're hanging out with, I think you're better than them. I don't know who's giving them guidance, but they're a bad influence. And you might have to say that. I remember my dad saying that to me about some of my friends when I was young. Guess what? A lot of those guys went to jail. Boy, seems like dad was right. I didn't go to jail. I listened to him. Now, dad would ground me from time to time. Oh, you were out with that dude again? And this is the outcome of that dude. Why don't you sit at home this weekend and think about how much fun it is to hang out with that dude versus sitting here. And I'm telling you, son, he's going to go to jail sometime acting like that. And you will with him. And I ain't bailing you out if you do.
I think that's one of the advantages to us living the lives that we lived is like we have
there's that contrast.
Yeah, my wife has that spidey sense. My wife is a private eye. Nobody in our house gets anything by her. She knows everything that's going on. She has a great knack for really picking out what my kids are doing, details of their life. She does an amazing job with that. But that's kind of that role piece.
She's also like a hyper-vigilant individual.
Super hyper-vigilant. Yeah. Not helicopter.
What are you saying that? I'm saying like in life.
Yeah.
Your wife is looking around. She's spotting scenes. She's been in around things. So she is always like eyes wide open, she's checking corners.
She is. But the great part about that is when she sees something, then she comes to me and she's like.
She's a lioness, yeah.
Here's what's happening.
Hey, pack leader.
Go handle that.
That's right.
And now I go in and handle that because that becomes the role. And then we get to come back in and create the discipline, and then we get to create the new. We just set them on a new course. Right?
Yeah, it's by the way.
Correction. Oh, for
Again,
sure.
we talk about this frequently, but if you're married, and I'm hoping that you are, and if you're not, I hope you find somebody. And I'm encouraging you, and this is, boy, I don't want to get too far into the stepfather thing, but I know that when I met my wife, she already had a son and I already had a son. So we are a blended family. And one of the first things I talked to her about in our relationship was, if we should get serious, we're going to have to figure out what level of male fathership you're going to be willing to let me have.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, well, we'll continue to diagnose that for a while. But as I prove myself to be of strong character, and, she's seen Christ through me, and that's, we've talked about that. That's how she became baptized, and we got married a year later. Like, through my whatever meager stewardship I was able to give at that time,
Yeah.
she found a love for Christ, and she wanted to dedicate herself to him. And in that is where I believe she found her comfort in me, being the father figure in the house, and she trusts me implicitly with our son. I discipline him like he's the exact same as my other son.
Because he is.
He's my son.
He's your son.
That's how I introduce him to everybody. This is my kid.
Yeah.
So that's how that is. There's this piece I want to make sure that we're understanding here, which is, for a man to feel he's successful as a father, I think he has to have a level of confidence that the things that he's doing are right. And that's kind of what I wanted to say with that. He checks with his wife. Hey, is this good? And she goes, you're doing great, honey.
Did I go too far?
Did I go too far? Because sometimes you get upset about something, and my wife will step in and go, all right, let me handle,
Yeah. She
tone it down a little. Okay.
she
I
gets a
am
little-
upset though.
She gets a little scared for their well-being.
Yeah. Or sometimes I take it too easy, and she's like, that's it. Like, oh, okay. A little more. All right. Jeez. And especially for me, as someone who for a period of time didn't have, a male to model that after. My dad was very busy too. My dad worked, he'd leave the house at 5 a.m. He wouldn't get home sometimes till 8 p.m. So we'd see these little snippets of my dad, except for on the weekends. And even then, like, there was a lot of trips and stuff. So like, he was gone quite a bit. So you don't have a lot of males to then bounce those. How am I supposed to be? You're looking up to this male figure. If there's not one around, you're going to look towards other ones that are local. You'll find some other people that are going to fill that, because no matter what, you need that piece as a boy.
For sure.
And as a girl too, as a woman's she's going to mimic, whatever. You said that great piece a couple of weeks back about, as a father for your daughter, you're trying to show how a woman should be treated.
Yeah. The role of a father is to show the daughter how a man treats a woman.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted out of her. I want to make sure we're really clear too, like, because we have women that listen to this. So,
Sure.
There's a lot of single moms out of there that are doing a kick-ass job of raising boys to the best of their ability. And there's very often we see where a woman can do that job. We're not trying to take away from that at all. We're just trying to say that, going back to what does the Bible say about all this, we want to try to create the best expectations. Now, if you're sitting here listening to this right now going, man, that sounds like a lot, it is. So before you just run and decide that I want to go make a kid, and that a kid is somehow going to maybe help make your relationship better or fix your relationship, the responsibility of a father is huge. We are intentionally laying out all these things, that the expectations of what a good father is, in hopes that when you hear this, that number one, before you make the decision to have a kid, that you start to formulate in your mind, what kind of father do I want to be?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're sitting
and what
here,
kind of children do I want to have?
what kind of children do I want to have?
Those are two important components that you should be considering.
Yeah.
And even if you already have kids, how do I want these kids to be when they're 1 year older than today, or 10 years older than today?
Yeah.
Yeah, ladies, gosh, I'm here. I save these numbers, and I might as well go through a couple of them quick. Ages 20 to 24, 60% of all births are out of wedlock. 60% of all births from the ages of 20 to 24 are out of wedlock, fatherless houses, meaning the dad's not there at all.
60% of them?
60%, 20 to 24 age group. 40% of all births in the United States are single mothers. 40%. It's sickening numbers. There are men that can step in then later. These are specifically biological fatherless houses.
So those statistics you're giving right there, those are not just having kids out of wedlock and then they're still playing parenting roles. It's just a mom's having a baby and then there's no dad there.
That's correct.
40%.
40%.
Of all.
Yeah. 2014. Jeez. So they do these in 10-year blocks.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
so
wonder
2014 to 2024. That's a 10-year block.
I wonder if they can, if you can start to look at the micro numbers of that and start to look at jail rates and
I have all those.
Crime.
We're going to go over those.
Okay.
That'll be in episode 4. It's very disheartening, but there's hope. Again, always we bring hope to the other side of it. That's why we're here doing this episode, frankly, and trying to lay out some things that we want to encourage men specifically. Obviously, this is a fatherhood discussion. We're trying to lay out some things to say we're not perfect. We did lots of stupid crap when our kids were small. Your first set of kids, my first son, tons of dumb crap.
Tons.
But it's never too late. I was texting with my son yesterday about a movie we saw. It was fun. We're just texting back and forth. My oldest.
Mm-hmm.
We spoke the other day.
How old is he now?
22. I'm old. But we got a relationship today, and we didn't for years. And that's because I drank a lot, obviously. We don't have to go into all that. But we're here trying to set up some things that guys can do that will help them, we hope, realize that you're not the only one that struggles sometimes. When you have a very little kid, and we're going to go through this in the next episode, it's tough. Your role is really just to be a family, mom supporter.
Mm-hmm.
When they're real small,
yeah,
you're just a supporter of mom. And that's a weird one because you go like, shouldn't I be? No, she's got this. You're there to help her every step of the way. You become the helper. But there is some very, men, if you don't step up, somebody else will, and the numbers are staggering. It'll be very sad to hear some of these and to see what is the outcome of these fatherless kids out there.
Yeah.
And women, your place that is so helpful, and it's so lovely when my wife does this. And I encourage you, please, ladies, do this. When you see your husband doing good, give him an attaboy. I love when my wife says, man, I seen that you did that. I'm so, what a great husband I picked. Such a good man. Or I hear her maybe say that to somebody else. Man, I can't get a nicer thing said to me. Oh, yeah, I got these numbers from nolongerfatherless.org, just so that people can go look up these statistics. There's a bunch more. nolongerfatherless.org.
We'll put that in the notes for you can be able to go and check that out.
It'll be in the notes for this entire series.
Yeah.
Give your husband or boyfriend hope that you hope to make a husband, I'm sure. Because if you're having a baby with this person, why not just do that? By the way, men, if you're going to have a baby with her, marry her.
Right.
Let's go ahead and get this thing filled out and done and just dedicate yourself. This is the new dedication. And you're there. Go ahead and do it.
Absolutely.
And step into that role. It's going to make you that much better. By the way, married couples make more money. You're going to live a wealthier life, a more fulfilled life if you make that decision.
There's a lot
So that's another piece to that.
Yeah, we'll look at that in further episodes.
Yeah.
There's this servant leadership piece I want to kind of unpack as we start to
hit the runway. Hour and 20.
Just goes by so quick, man. There's these attributes of a servant leader. There's 2 very specific ones I want to talk through, and that's faithfulness and forgiveness. And I think that as we start to teach our kids this idea of faithfulness, we've talked about here many, many times that the standard we want to look at is not perfection, it's faithful. Mm-hmm. And what does that even mean to be a faithful person? Mm-hmm. I'm tying forgiveness into that because I think forgiveness is a big piece of being faithful. It is when I make mistakes or somebody makes mistakes against me that I have that forgiving heart, because when I can do that, that's what's going to create the faithfulness that is necessary for me to be able to teach and model to my kids what a servant leader looks like. Because throughout their whole entire life, I want my kids to be a servant leader. Servant leaders, they come from the front. They're always leading from the front, right? And so what are some of these key attributes that they need to be or to have so they can be fortified as they lead going forward? The forgiveness piece for me, I think, is probably one of the most challenging pieces because especially when somebody has done something against you, modern day world would tell you that, eye for an eye. Right. And so being a forgiving person and having forgiveness just goes against the grain of what society would tell us to do today. But I think if we're going to be modeling to our kids what it looks like to be a faithful person, then we also have to be teaching them forgiveness and being willing to ask for forgiveness when you mess up. That's that whole ownership piece.
In our recent series, Mentally Hard, Andy, you actually broke down, because I'm hearing those two things. So it's forgiveness, and what was the first one? Faithfulness. But you brought up multiple times there how you're going to have to model that. And that's if like your child should do something that offends you or hurts you or something to that effect, you have to be able to forgive them. And I think the barrier frequently to forgiveness is anger. And what did we discover anger was actually rooted in?
That's a secondary emotion.
From what? Fear?
Fear.
Which is fear that maybe I'm not enough. Maybe it's however you're visualizing yourself to be. So again, the biggest component, the way you're going to be able to be the best leader, the most fortified person in your household, this is where we're going to go again, but it's right here in the book. Who does God say I am? And then you spend time in there daily digesting who God says you are, and then you have communion with your brothers in Christ, other Christian men. Hey, here's this thing I ran into this week. How would you respond to that?
That's good right there.
Oh, okay. You would do this thing. Boy, that's a lot better than me screaming in his face. I'm gonna have to go back. What would you do to make remedy that when you screamed in his face? And you'd go, well, you're probably gonna have to apologize. Oh boy, really? Yeah. So get in the Word. What does the Word say? What does God say about me as a man? How does he want me to be as a father? We've laid out some of those here. Secondly, what do my peers think about me? And where's my value lie? Because it's that like low self-esteem that causes the fear that then causes the anger. So if I'm angry, my kid says something and it pinches some little weird nerve in me that now I'm actually mad. Because, your kids are going to get frustrated. They're going to say stuff. They're just not as constrained as you can be. When my wife and I argue, I've said this before, we don't use name calling. Why? Because you can say something and it's hard to take that back. It takes a long time to get out of that. It's a stink.
Sure
it
does.
Lasts. So we made a commitment early in our relationship. We don't do that, and we don't. Man, there's sometimes I want to, boy. And I walk around those words, oh boy. But I don't. And neither does she. But your kid isn't that restrained. They're young. They're still blurting crap out sometimes. They say nuts stuff. And if you get mad about that, maybe there's some sort of issue of identity for you inside of that you need to discover why you're that bloody mad. Now, if you're mad because you were scared that they were going to get hurt, that's a different thing. But if they call you a name and somehow that hurts you, gosh, maybe it's hitting a little too close to home, yeah?
Yeah, for sure it is.
So fortify yourself is what I'm saying first. Fortify through the Word, through who you're hanging with. Again, you're the accumulation of all the people you surround yourself with. So if you're a parent, probably time to start surrounding yourself with parents. If you don't already have a friend, a parent network around you, find some. You can. And then I think you can start living out those steps there. If you'll repeat them for me, please.
Yeah, the steps are this. Well, real quick, just roll on that mentoring piece, right? Just to add on to what you had just said there is having some older dads that are part of your life as well. So that when you are going through something, you can go to them and be like, hey, how do I handle this situation? And try to get some data from them. I mean, that's part of the reason why we're doing this podcast is so we can share with you some of the mistakes that we made when we went through certain scenarios.
We're older dads.
Yeah. I'm grandpa.
He's a grandpa.
Right?
Not quite yet.
The forgiveness piece is, like I told the story a while back, but my 22-year-old son, when he was 12 years old, we were on a cruise ship, and we had this scenario where I just berated him for just it was just an obscene reason why I did it.
Yeah.
And I thought about it forever. And it took me 10 years to go to my son and be like, man, I really messed that up with as a dad. I'm so sorry. And his response to me was so beautiful. It was like, Dad, I think about that never.
Yeah, I love that story. I've told that story in your capacity many times.
Yeah. I think about that never. It's never too late to go to them and ask for forgiveness and to
Nope.
rectify poor decisions that you made as a dad when they were younger. So if that's step one, I think that's probably step one for a lot of people is being able to look back at your life as a father, wherever you have erred with your kids, and being able to go and ask forgiveness and rectify that with them.
Especially if you're on a new path now.
Yeah.
If you have a new path, if today's the first day of the new path, give it a couple of weeks. It's probably smart. Let them see that the path is changing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a man, and then we can kind of, put the wheels down. But there's a man I was speaking with recently who you and I both spoke to him actually at that holiday party we were at.
Yeah.
And he was stating that he was working with a guy in prison ministry who really is just desperate to get his kids back. And he had to kind of lay it out to this guy like, that's about step 5, buddy. I want that for you. We can achieve that. But you got a road, and it's going to be a road to walk.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a guy who does that, and he says, but I'm going to walk with you. And I'm going to help you on all these steps. Because that's part of this, too, is like, not all men know how to be dads because some guys didn't have dads. That's part of what we're trying to do here. Is just kind of give some little road signs. And then we're going to include a couple other brilliant people in our notes section so you can check out their stuff and maybe get some more stuff. But we're encouraging you in ways that's always Christ is going to be your best because he's going to use that supernatural power to pave that road in front of you. He's going to put people on your path that are going to be influences, and they're going to be helpful, and they're going to guide you and shepherd you into becoming the dad you want to be. But you have to align your attention with that.
That's it.
Your intention, rather. So you have to decide, who do I want to be?
Step 1.
Do I want to be a good dad? Okay. Then who do I want this little one that's mine to be? And how can I get them there? And set about that, pray about that. I want to be that. And watch God move mountains.
Yeah. Looking at these passages of scripture of what does God the Father look like? He's loving. He's forgiving. He's patient. He's rewarding. He's a teacher. He's a role model. He's an encourager. He's faithful, right? There's all these attributes of God that he has shown us through scripture of what it looks like to be a good father. The tools are there. Mm-hmm. It's a matter of us taking these tools and implementing them into our lives and being willing to make the sacrifice for our kids. You chose to have the kids. It's your role to make the sacrifice to lead them well.
Yep. God says, come to me. I will listen. I will respond.
Amen.
He always does.
Always does, man.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Holy smokes, another hour and 20 minutes.
Just goes by so quickly.
It just flies. We're so grateful that you came and shared this with us today. Andy, tell them how they can get a hold of us.
So if you would like to have questions asked, you can email us at updpodcast@gmail.com. You can direct message us on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. You'll find us on all the social media platforms. We try to keep these podcasts to about an hour and 20 minutes. We want to make sure that your time spent with us is of value. We don't want to drag this on. We want you to be able to walk away with some key things that hopefully can change your life. If you just found us on YouTube, subscribe to us. If you're listening to us on Spotify, on Apple, on Amazon, subscribe there. It's the best way that you can help support us.
Yeah. We have interviews coming in the future. We already have some
next
people
few
booked.
weeks.
It's going to be there's some people that we really respect and enjoy, and we're so excited to be able to get them in here. We got a new studio space where we're going to do those interviews. Things are changing. Things are moving quickly. We're very excited about that. Next episode is the stages of fatherhood. And we're going to talk about, when you have a baby to toddler to preteen to teenagers to adults, because we have all those. So we're going to kind of unpack what that looks like. You're going to want to check that out. We got some great data on that. We're hoping that the first guest will be available to kind of round this whole fatherhood series out. He's a guy you've heard us talk about a lot. I'm not going to say his name right now, only because we're not 100% certain that it'll work out, but we're really hoping for it. We're praying about it. He knows who he is. Let's make this thing work, buddy. Thank you so much for joining us. You got anything else, Andy?
No, man. Thanks. This has been a good topic. It's one of those challenging topics. It's as you kind of dig into this, it's also a helpful reminder just for me of my intentionality, even with my own kids, even though they're adult kids, but just to still be intentional with them.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. It's really helped me to kind of focus my attention, because sometimes we can get caught up in the world.
Busy.
And you start doing something like this, and we hope that you guys have the same thing, that this inspires you to take one step closer to your kid and really just reconnect if you've unconnected at all, or connect for the first time if that's the direction you're heading. Yeah. And we want to pray that you have a deep and a fulfilling relationship with Jesus, and that he blesses you all the days of your life.
And all God's people said.
They said amen.
Sure did, brother. Have a good week, man.
You too, pal.
All right.
Thanks, guys.